Thank you for joining us right here on All Angles. We have a special youth focus, and we continue with our GBV discussion with Elaine Pypers, Communications Officer and Ambassador at SA Women Fight Back, gender-based violence activist Boitumelo, Thage, and Lesley, the spokesperson at the Total Shutdown Intersectional Women's Movement. Ladies, thank you so much for staying with us. Now, I want to start with you, Lesley, in terms of the work that you have done as the Total Shutdown Intersectional, women movement, because you have engaged with the presidency. You've engaged with the president, you've engaged with government, you've tabled down your demands. Give us context in terms of what those demands were to the government before we even get, because I can see a facial expression which says, Tumelo, nothing has been done since then. Don't get excited. But just let's table some of those demands first.
So basically, women across the country, when we're leading up to the march on the 1st of August, we tabled 24 demands. And at that time, it was 24 years post-democracy. And the 24 demands represent how we as women and LGBTQI plus community and gender non-conforming people are not safe or free in this country. Part of the demands that have been met was the convening of the National Gender Summit, which happened in 2018 between the 1st and 2nd of November. We've had the signing of the declaration, which happened in March. We've had the NSP, the drafting of the NSP, the National Strategic Plan in the fight against gender-based violence. And with that, we're hoping that the GBV fund that has been created goes to the people that truly need those funds, and the part of the demands that are very important, that would translate to the people on the ground, is the training of legislators and people in the courts and the police, gender sensitivity training, to ensure that when you receive any victims or survivors of the violence, you're sensitized and you're very aware. And one of the things that we also called for was for the president himself to say that he will not appoint any known perpetrators or any apologists within his cabinet, because we know that it's going to have a top-down trickle effect, that when we know that our president is not associating with known perpetrators, then we'll know that companies are not going to do it. Our own friends are not going to do it, and part of most of these demands haven't been met. 50% of those demands haven't been met at all. And where are we now?
That's the question.
How far could we have been if the demands have been met?
Yeah, how many lives could have been saved, Lesley? How many lives could have been saved had those demands been met?
Exactly. And particularly when it comes, the president did say when he was addressing us, I think this was on the level 3 lockdown, when he said that they've rolled out the sensitivity training at police stations. We want to know which police stations are these, because we're still getting reports from women and victims saying that we're still being ill-treated by the police, we're still being ridiculed, and which police stations are these, and what are the reporting channels that we can go to when we know that there's a police station that has not been trained, where victims were re-victimized, where victims were ridiculed, so it seems like it's all performative for us. It seems like they are just talking to tick boxes to say, yes, we've addressed this, yes, we've addressed that, but where is the implementation? We're not seeing any change. But with the only thing that we're seeing is that women and children and queer bodies are still dying.
Well, I think in true, social media language, Lesley, it's the continuation of condemning these events for me. It's what really, gets me as a woman, that for how long will we keep condemning? Will we keep saying we condemn, we condemn, we condemn, we condemn, but nothing happens? So I have to then...
What drastic measures should we do as women? Should we now go out in the streets and burn down buildings to be taken seriously?
That's the question.
What do we need to do?
All right, let me bring in Elaine there. Let me bring Elaine there, because you're also from the SA Women Fight Back. Elaine, as an organization, what have you done as women? You're doing so much work individually as a woman to fight for your life. That is activism on its own, continuously, fighting off men on the street who are whistleblowing or are making comments, who are trying to, violate you. Then there's the work that you also do as a collective within the SA Women Fight Back. Have you tried to reach out at all to government, and what has been their response?
On the practical implementations, there are 2 apps that we currently have. One is called Vault, and Vault is where you can store all your documentations, your journaling on your abuse that have taken place, and then pictures that you can save on Vault. which is a safe platform for you to store all your information. And then there is My Voice. So My Voice is another app that helps assist you in cases of emergency, where you can where you have a safe contact list, and whenever something happens, you can use the app to call for in emergency situations. I'm a new ambassador, I will be honest, so I'm not fully aware of all that SA Women Fight Back has done to engage government, but what they have done on a practical level is to ensure that we are there for women on a grassroots level who do go to court and that need the support, and they don't have that support.
Yeah, I think what you're also saying to us, Elaine, here is that at some point, women have taken a decision to say, if we wait on government, we might just wait for the rest of our lives. If we wait for government, we might just lose our lives while waiting for government. So how about we, of course, unite and come up with practical tools which we can disseminate amongst ourselves to ensure that we keep safe, and the app being one of them, where you can make sure that you and your loved ones are continuously safe. So I have to come to you then, Boitumelo, and say, I mean, have you had any engagement whatsoever, either personally as an activist in your own right, with a collective of other women, where you have tried to engage the police, tried to engage government around resolutions to help save women's lives in South Africa?
Well, as an activist, collectively with other gender activists, what we have done is we approach people who are meant to be protecting women. So we do speak to police, we do speak to institutions of higher learning as well, to find out what they are doing, what they can do. And I think the response from, for example, institutions of higher learning regarding the gender-based violence in institutions of higher learning was a little bit not what we expected, because they are not providing women with solutions to tackle gender-based violence, but what they're doing is saying, here, we're giving you pepper sprays to protect yourself, meaning, in my opinion, it means they're trying to tell us that it's happening, so just have this to protect yourself. So I think the justice system, police officers, government needs to do more, needs to do better to ensure that the punishment for perpetrators is a little bit harsher, not a little bit harsher, but so much harsher, so that another perpetrator who has it in mind to do something wrong would see that, okay, if I do this, this is what's going to happen to me, and would therefore refrain from doing wrong. But the justice system is genuinely failing women, so yes.
I want to bring you into what the Justice Minister, Ronald Lamola, had presented, of course, in Parliament, just in terms of what they say they're doing. And perhaps you ladies can let me know if this satisfies you or not. I'll just, of course, read a brief of it, and you can then, of course, have an opportunity to give your call to action to government in terms of what you want to see. Because, as you say, Boitumelo, we need harsher sentences that send a very strong message that, you know, if you even as of think or even consider doing something like this, you first check yourself into rehab before you even think of going to act on whatever thoughts that you're having. Because the concern here is that we're not only seeing older men being perpetrators of violence, be it sexually or even murder, it's now trickling down to young adults, it's trickling to young men, it's trickling down to young boys, it's trickling down to children. We're seeing high school boys being perpetrators of gender-based violence in the country. So that says that we are definitely grooming, a sort of generation of, perpetrators. So let me just read a bit here from the Justice Minister, Ronald Lamola, in terms of what he had to say. Now, he said that the amendments which he has provided, which are the Criminal Law Amendment Bill and the Domestic Violence Amendment Bill, said that they will provide a victim-centered response in the criminal justice system in respect to sexual offences. But he also said they will tighten bail conditions for perpetrators of sexual offences and also parole conditions are also strengthened, and minimum sentences will be increased. Personally, I want to see more action and less talk, but I want to start with you, Lesley, in terms of if this satisfies you and what else you would like to see in terms of action, because like we've been saying, women's lives are at risk here.
It probably is a step forward in the right direction, and we will see in terms of the implementation of it, especially when it comes to bail, releasing perpetrators that are known to have violated women out on bail, because we know for a fact that they're going to go and do it again. They're going to probably find that woman or the gender non-conforming person and kill them. So what are we doing in the interim, and how long is that going to take in terms of implementation? 1, 2. Prevention is very, very important. And I'm taken aback by a tweet that Lesley mentioned yesterday, the importance of educating children at a young age about same-sex couples. We need a comprehensive curriculum that needs to be implemented in the education system in terms of gender and sexuality courses, subject. We need to do that because we've reached a point where as adults, we're missing it, and we need to go back to implementing steps on how do we prevent that, and we start from the ground with children. And we've seen a lot of cases where young children are being hateful to the point where a 14-year-old killed a gay person. Where does a 14-year-old know that you're gay, therefore you don't have a right to exist, and therefore I'm going to kill? Not even know that who gave them that courage and that boldness to want to get up and want to kill another human being because they're different. It comes with the education, it comes with the implementation of the laws. We need to constantly prevent, and if the mechanisms that we have in place for prevention are not working, we need to look at what the laws are saying. Minimum sentences should be increased to harsher sentences. We shouldn't even consider parole for people that are known to be perpetrators of GBV.
Yeah.
We need to be harsher and very stern and decisive in dealing with this matter.
Lesley, I think for me also the key point you mentioned there, which stuck with me, is we need preventative measures. We've been reactive for a very long time, and our response rate has proven to be very slow. We've seen with the time in which police would come to the scene where there was alleged there was crime. We've seen in terms of the response rate from the police when having to take those DNA tests, having to give support. So preventative measures being the key point. But for you, Elaine, bringing you in terms of what then the demands are moving forward, so to prevent lives being lost, what do you think needs to be done?
I think we need to address the root cause, which is systemic patriarchy. If we don't address patriarchy, we won't address gender-based violence. I think we also need to take this to schools, look at it at a grassroots level, where from a very young age we implement talks with primary school going scholars, where we speak to them on consent and gender-based violence, not just for young boys but girls as well. I think by involving young girls, we teach them that they need to know what consent is as women, and that as a woman you do have consent, you do have a voice. I believe that we also then teach them that gender-based violence is not okay and it's never okay. As much as we teach young boys that they need to ask for consent, and that gender-based violence is not a form of love.
Right. Boitumelo, I have to close this with you in terms of your comment. I hate to say this, absolutely hate to say this, but seeing the stats that South Africa is the 4th highest country with GBV cases out of 183 countries, this according to the World Health Organization, it tells me that the journey of the GBV activist is still long. We still have a lot of work that needs to be done. As women, activists have a lot of work to do in terms of raising awareness. How do you think then the conversation needs to escalate so that It trickles down to children, to young boys, to young girls, to young women, but also to the influential, role players who have those positions of influence and authority, so that we can turn that high number round and South Africa can finally be a safe country for women to reside in.
I think I would, first of all, agree with what you said when you started, by saying that the government and all other institutions would need to take action, because I think a lot of people have given speeches and had programs and had summits where they've spoken up against gender-based violence, but there hasn't been action, there hasn't been implementation of any of those resolutions. I mean, we've signed petitions and we don't see any change. So I think the first thing would be action and implementation. And the second thing, I think we need to start moving our activism actively into townships and rural areas, so that we educate boy children, we educate young women about how to tackle the gender-based violence issues, educate young women that there is nothing wrong with speaking up about having been victimized, create safe spaces for young women in townships, also to ensure that the boy children grow up knowing that gender-based violence is wrong, feeling entitled to a woman's body is wrong, so that we don't have a society that's going to come up in the next 10 years victimizing women.
And that's where we leave it. Lesley, Boitumelo, Elaine, thank you so much, young women. Thank you so much, Imbokodo, for, taking on this very difficult journey of being at the front line of this pandemic and voicing out what needs to be said in terms of women's lives being acknowledged, being seen, and being saved. I thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Alrighty then. Well, that's where we come to the end of our conversation, our discussion right here on all angles as we place a special focus. And unfortunately, I will reiterate that we live in a time where you have to call your sister, you have to call your mother, you have to call your daughter, you have to check on your female friends and make sure that they are safe. This is the South Africa that we live in. And this episode we dedicate to all the families, the loved ones, the victims and survivors of GBV in this country. And we will, of course, continue to have this dialogue until South Africa is a safe country for all women who live in it. Thank you for joining me. I'm Boitumelo. Goodbye.